أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين واللعنة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الحكيم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. كلا بل لا تكرمون اليتيم ولا تحاضون على طعام المسكين وتأكلون التراث أكلا لما وتحبون المال حبا جما. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. Your second salawat for love of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. And your loudest salawat is condolences to Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman. We've been discussing the surah of Imam Hussain in the Holy Quran, Surah Fajr, the 89th chapter of the Holy Quran. The last 2 nights and the last few nights, our discussion was spending around the concept of understanding that wealth and poverty are not punishment and reward from Allah, but rather they are trials from Allah. After mentioning that both wealth and poverty are trials from Allah, Allah warns those of not thinking these as punishment by concluding, Kalla, that certainly this is not a reward or a punishment, this is a trial upon you. One of the instructions of why Allah begins this verse with Kalla is to say that you who look at these as reward and punishment spend out of these situations incorrectly. And when I see wealth as a reward, I become careless of my wealth. Meaning that I look at, Allah gave me wealth, Allah loves me, I can do anything I want to. And on the other side, I look at poverty as disgrace, and I think in a state of poverty, Allah has neglected me and turned away from me, so therefore Allah does not care what I do, and there's nothing I can do to correct my situation in the eyes of God. There's the famous line of a comedian where he says, what? I asked God for a bicycle, then I realized He doesn't work like that. So I stole a bicycle and sought forgiveness. And that's what people believe, is that if they are afflicted with poverty, then do whatever you have to get out of poverty, and then deal with it afterwards. And this is a mistake. This is why Allah concludes and He says, Kalla, certainly not. And then He explains the social reforms of passing the test of wealth and poverty of this life. One of the important messages of Karbala is social reform. When Imam Hussain explains and he says, إِنَّمَا أَخْرَجْتُ لِأَصْلَاحِ أُمَّةِ جَدِّ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ. Certainly I have taken this excursion to go and repair the religion of my grandfather. It's to say that people have lost the concept of standing up for right and standing against what's wrong to fix in society. And which is why people submitted to the subjugation of one like Yazid. It was not that Yazid was unknown to the people. No. He was the son of Muawiyah, the son of the Khalifa. If you were to think about popular individuals in the history at that time, the son of the Khalifa is probably one of the most notable personalities. Everybody knew he's a drunkard. Everybody knew he's an oppressor. Everybody knew he's an abusive individual. Go look even at the death of Muawiyah itself. You'll find Yazid is not with his father at the time of his death. He's out living a life of aish. He's enjoying himself when his father dies. Meaning that even Muawiyah knew that this man is incapable of what is righteous and what is good. The interaction Imam Hussain has is that, O people who attach yourselves to my message is one of reform in society. You cannot love me and be an oppressor at the same time. You cannot be someone who says and weeps for Imam Hussain, on the other side is careless of what is going on in society. Which is why even in this surah, Allah explains and He says, Kalla bal la tukrimun al-yatim. He points to the social reforms of society that are causing the downfall that exists amongst us. First and foremost, Allah mentions, and He mentions 4 attributes. We'll do our best to get through as many of them as we can. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad. Allah says, Bal, la tukrimun al-yatim. You don't do kirama with the orphan. You don't honor the orphan. Allah doesn't say you don't give money to the orphan. Allah doesn't say you don't give food to the orphan. He says you don't honor the orphan. It can happen that an orphan inherits from his father wealth, but wealth itself is not sufficient to ensure the proper upbringing of a child. A child is in need of much more than just money to pay bills. They are in need of character. They are in need of support. They are in need of love. Allah's description of karama, la tukrimun al-yatim, is to indicate that it's not just money that you need to give to a child. Today, when you look at orphan sponsorship, and you have the opportunity now with a variety of means to offer orphan sponsorship. Orphan sponsorship for us is very different than it is for other people. Other people simply say it'll cost you this much to give a child food. And go, you give the child food and khalas, here, you're done. No. When we talk about, and our institutions promote the concept of kifala, taking care of an orphan, it's not sufficient to say that we gave the child food and medicine. No, your goal is far greater than that. Your responsibility is greater than that. Sometimes it happens that person has wealth, but they have no iman, no character. When you and I sponsor an orphan, it's to make sure that that child remains in the love of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Aside from just giving that child food, does the child know how to pray? Teaching them to fast, teaching them to have a relationship with Ahlul Bayt, giving them the ri'ayah, giving them the pleasure of the fact of taking a child on a family trip. Do you know how many orphans have never been to a restaurant? How many an orphan has never been in a store to pick out clothes? Who's going to take them? That father's gone. The culture doesn't support that, or the woman doesn't have the concept of it. It's the men in the family who take care of these responsibilities and take care of the children, take them out to a park, take them out to the water, take them out to play, travel with them. Which is why Allah's description is not simply give them money and make them disappear. No, Allah's description is, did you honor the orphan? Did you take care of the child? Did you fulfill the obligations of that child and assist them in success? This is one of the responsibilities that Allah wants us to have when it comes to our society and our community, and making sure that the community succeeds. And this is one of the reforms of a society, that you will fail this test if you don't pay attention to the right of the orphan. The example in how much Allah promotes this, we take a look and we see that Amir al-Mu'mineen is known as Kafil al-Aitam, who is the father of Aitam. In the descriptions they write and say that when we talk about the 20th of Muharram and the physician comes to visit Amir al-Mu'mineen after he's been struck in the head, the face of Amir al-Mu'mineen has been colored yellow by the poison in his body. The physician comments and he says that this poison will essentially kill Amir al-Mu'mineen, but what may delay and ease his difficulty is bring him some milk. The description is authentic to say that outside of the door of the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the orphans gathered with glasses and glasses of milk. Why? They said whenever someone would be rude to us, we would run to our father Ali. Whenever someone would abuse us and there was no one to protect us, we would run to our father Ali. Today our father is in difficulty. What is it that we possess that we can save the life of our father? Imam Hussain tells Amir al-Mu'mineen replies, he says, "Oh Hassan, when have you ever seen Ali take something that was not rightfully his? How can Ali take that from orphans which they possess?" The attribute of love for orphans was something established in the character of Ahlul Bayt. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Ana wa kafil al-aytam hakadha fil jannah. That Rasulullah would explain that one who takes care of the orphans will be like with me like this in heaven. And meaning the promotion of this care of orphans was something important and something valuable. Amongst the various narrations that we have in promoting this attribute and reintroducing this into society, Imam Majlisi narrates a story that takes place in the city of Kufa, where he says one of the people of Kufa by the name of Abdullah, who had done Hajj before, decided he wanted to go to the house of Allah and prepared for the journey to Hajj. And he prepared a mablagh, a wealth of about 500 dinars to take with him on his trip to Hajj. Hajj in those days is not like Hajj today. You get on a plane, you get off of a plane, thank you very much, do your Hajj and go back. No, this was a very arduous journey where you would have to find a caravan, and in the caravan would have to be reliable people. It wasn't just enough that you found someone going to Hajj. You didn't have certainty if you go with this guy, does he know enough about the situation of what we're going to pass through that he'll bring me back alive? So it was arduous, it was very difficult. He says, I stepped out of Kufa in the search for now the qafilas heading that were on the outskirts of Kufa, and I passed by where the dump of Kufa was. Looking for the qafilas to take me, I passed the dump. He says, in the dump, I suddenly saw something move. He looks over and he sees a woman who is cleaning off a dead duck or a dead chicken that's laying inside of the trash. She's cleaning it. And he says, this is Kufa. It's a city of mu'mineen. He says, old lady, maybe you don't know in the religion of Islam, eating something dead is haram. You can't eat this bird. She says, leave me alone. He says, what do you mean leave you alone? I see you, you're preparing this duck, it's dead, and you're in the trash pile. This is inappropriate. You can't eat this. You can't feed this to anyone. What are you doing? 1,000 thoughts must have been going through his head that maybe, God forbid, she sells it. Maybe, God forbid, she serves it to someone else. She says, for me, this is halal. He says, what you mean? She says, Hajji. Because where he is, he's looking for a kafila of Hajj. He has his possessions. He says, Hajji, my husband has died and I have 4 daughters at home. No one asks about us. No one comes and checks on us. No one has helped us. There has not been food in my house for 4 days. My children are on the verge of death. This is halal for me. Abdullah says, in that moment, I took the 500 dinars I had, I handed it to her, and I walked away. 500 dinars is a large sum of money. 500 dinars of gold is not, even till today, it's a large sum of cash. And it's necessary. Today too, when you go to Hajj, it's expensive. He says, I left her, and I went back to Kufa, and everybody else found their caravans, took their caravans, and they left. When people started coming back from Hajj, I started greeting them, Hajj al-Mabrur, and they would reply to me, wa antum kadhalik Hajj al-Mabrur. What do you mean? Another one says, he comes and he sees another friend from Hajj. He says, welcome back from Hajj. They say, now you want to talk to us. He says, what do you mean? He says, in Hajj, we would see you every time we would approach you, would run away from us. Says, I don't understand. And in the habit of when someone comes back from Hajj, you visit them. He goes to people's houses and they all congratulate him on Hajj and he stays silent. He doesn't say anything. Until that night he has a dream. And in his dream, he sees Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And Rasulullah says, oh Abdullah, for the task of you caring for these orphans, Allah has created an angel for you that will do Hajj for you every year from now until the Day of Judgment. This is why people are saying that they have seen you. This is the reality of the fact of how important the kirama, the taking care, the honoring of orphans is in the religion of Islam. That each of us that has an ability, we should go to and take this effort to ensure that we are associated with these orphans and we take care of them and they're in need. And there are so many in need. And we don't pay attention to it. Allah describes, كَلَّا بَلْ لَا تُكْرِمُونَ الْيَتِيمَ وَلَا تُحَاضُّونَ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. And you are not those who go and support and urge for the feeding of the poor. The concept of feeding people in Islam is incredibly important. When you take a look at, for example, Khalilullah Ibrahim, one of the explanations of why he is known as the friend of Allah is that Ibrahim insisted on feeding people whenever he ate. They describe and say that Ibrahim alayhi salam built his house on the corner of a major road. And every time that it would come time to eat, he would stand outside on the road and wait for a passerby to come so that Ibrahim could eat. He would never eat alone. Which is why the description of the angels, when they come to punish the people of Lut, and they come into the house of Ibrahim, and Ibrahim serves them food, and they say, we don't eat. Ibrahim becomes frightened. He says, who is this that comes in but doesn't eat? The attribute of feeding people in Islam is huge, and which is why there are different categories of people to feed and how it is that feeding people should be done. First and foremost, there are different categories. One of the questions that sometimes someone who hasn't understood what Islam's true message is will ask the question, we feed these people and they all have food at home. What's the importance of that? Why don't we feed those who don't have food? No, the feeding of a mu'min is very different than the feeding of not a mu'min. One who submits to the authority of Allah is honored in the eyes of Allah. Allah Himself explains, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. Meaning that within humanity, if there is a difference that exists between us and there is a way to stratosphere and to create groups of people, Allah Himself is describing the closest to Allah, the one most related to Allah, is the one who has the most fear of Allah. Atqakum, those who have taqwa from amongst you. This is why the mu'min is different than the non-mu'min. It's very good to feed everyone, but if you have an opportunity to feed someone who is a friend of Allah and cares about Allah, that takes priority over everything else. It should be done. It doesn't mean that don't feed others. No, make it a practice that this becomes a priority and we don't step away from this. The sponsorship, for example, these majalis, the serving of food in these places, is a unique opportunity and a tawfiq from Allah. And it's something you have to teach as well too. Which is why teaching your children to do this, stand there, teach them to give, teach them to take and to have hirs, to have hunger for this. That this is something special. That the one who's handing it to you, it's not the fact of the house that you're getting it from. He's saying, I have given this in the way of Ahlul Bayt. Do you wish to accept it from Ahlul Bayt into your life? This isn't normal food. There is tawfiq behind the one who gives it and tawfiq behind the one who receives it. This is why there's a humorous thing that they mention in Iraq in the days of Muharram. There's something called Qayem. For most of us, we call it halim. But there they call it Qayem. Qayem means something priceless, something expensive. And they describe and say it's expensive and priceless. Why? Because it's attached to the message of Imam Hussain. Meaning you can eat it any time of the year, but nobody eats it the rest of the year. They only want to eat it now. Why? Because when the one who hands it to you says, min yad al-imam. This is from the hand of the imam. This is from the taraf of the imam, the side of the imam. And it adds value to it. Feeding people is something very important, something that the Ahlul Bayt frequently practice as well too. When you take a look and you see, we have one imam who is known as Kareem Ali Muhammad, Kareem Ahlul Bayt, the generous one of Ahlul Bayt, the giving one of Ahlul Bayt, and that is Imam Hussain ibn Ali al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. Imam Hassan's sufra is famous for how he would feed people and how he would go through the effort of ensuring that anyone who was hungry or was in need, there was a place for them to eat. To the extent where his sufra is something that till today, when we serve food to people, we say this is as if you can imagine, come and eat here, like it was the sufra of Imam Hassan, that there is no one to question you, no one to ask you. There's one description that says a man came to the sufra of Imam Hassan. He sat down, and as he would eat, he would put one piece of bread on the side and one in his plate. He would take a little bit of food for himself and put some on the side. Imam Hassan sits and he says, "O friend, O traveler, if you have someone who is hungry, we will send food for them with you. You don't need to hide it yourself. We'll take care of them too." The man says, "No, rather, the man who sent me here, I worry about him, so I want to give him some food too." Imam Hassan says, "What do you mean? There's someone here who's needy and hungry that sent you here?" He says, "I met a man on the way here who told me to come to this sufra. I saw him eating bread that was so hard he would break it with his knees." Imam Hassan replies, he says, "You've described my father, Ali ibn Abi Talib." And look at the barakah of Imam Hassan, that even though in his house his father eats that bread, which is the most hardest of breads, he serves the best of food to people where they even wish they share with Amir al-Mu'mineen. The serving of food to people is something that, for example, we see the fourth Imam and all of the A'immah do themselves. Where the description of Imam Zain al-Abidin comes and says that he would cover his face and hide his face in the middle of the night and feed people in the city of Medina, household on top of household, such that no one ever knew that it was Imam Zain al-Abidin until his shahada, that the person who would bring them food stopped coming. Every Imam had this seerah. We have the ability to follow this seerah with ease. It's not even difficult anymore. And to do it secretly without them ever knowing that you're there. Now when you support the charity that feeds people, they take your wealth and they secretly go and they present it to someone in need without ever that person knowing that you are the one who presented it. Which is why the verse of the Quran, if you pay attention to it, it doesn't just say feed the poor. It says, وَلَا تَحَاضُّونَ عَلَىٰ طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. Tahadh is you don't invite others to do this action. Unfortunate for us, we don't do it ourselves, let alone invite someone else to do it. But the attribute of a believer is not only does he feed those in need, He promotes others to feed the people in need, to make it a practice that in our wealth is a share of those who are needy, to go through the effort of explaining and serving the food to those who are in difficulty. The aspect of generosity of Ahlul Bayt. There's one more mention from the life of Imam Hussain. With one salawat, if we can all move forward a little bit. For the love of Imam Hussain, your second salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The generosity of Imam Hussain was such that the things that he would do and say are considered the peak of generosity, and they've been hidden from us because of the evil of the Banu Umayyah who wanted to destroy his character. Imam Hussain's generosity, in one example that's given, which is beautiful. Imam Hussain is reclining, taking a break, leaning on a cushion. A man comes up to him and says, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, I'm being attacked by my enemy, aid me. Imam Hussain sits up and he says, who is attacking you? Who is it that's bothering you? I am here to help you. The man says, I am under attack of my enemy, poverty is attacking me. So Imam Hussain says, poverty is attacking you. He says, yes, this enemy does not leave my door. It keeps coming back to me and preventing me from being able to take care of my family and responsibilities. It is as if it is constantly at my door in attack. Imam Hussain, without thinking twice, takes out a large amount of money and hands it to him and says, if your enemy ever comes back to you after this, come to me and I will assist you. Okay, you didn't get it. Let me explain. All right, hold on. Hang on. Muhammad. You see, sometimes you really have to think about the statement of the Imam. You can't take it at face value. Today, if a poor man comes to you and says, hey, listen, I'm in a lot of difficulty, and I give him a large sum of money, what do I say? I don't want to see you again. Take this and go away. And what do I say? This is my generosity that I gave him, and I gave him a lot. But don't come back to me after this, because after how much I've given you, don't come back to me. The generosity of Imam Hussain is la mathil. There is no example amongst humanity. Because not only does he give him a large sum of money, he says, if ever he bothers you again, don't think twice, come to me, and I'm still sitting here ready to aid you against your enemy. This is the generosity of Ahlul Bayt. This is the generosity that we want to have amongst ourselves, that when we say we are the Shia of Ali Muhammad, that there is no one who is more generous than us in our giving. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And not just yourself. The seerah of Ahlul Bayt is to teach you how to do this, which is why it's like, وَلَا تَحَاضُّونَ عَلَى تَعْمِ. You don't promote others to give. You can't fix your society until you can't solve your problems, until not only are you doing good yourself, but you're inviting others to the path of goodness. You're inviting others to the path of aiding people in need. You're inviting others to give in the sake of Allah and to help people and assist them further. The third of these attributes that Allah mentions in this verse, in these verses, He says, وَتَأْكُلُونَ التُّرَاثَ أَكْلًا لَمًّا. That these problems befall you as a community. Why? When you take inheritance and eat it without regard and concern. أَكْلًا لَمًّا. Indiscriminately consume inheritance. Today, when we look at the concept of inheritance, the reason it's a point of conversation and discussion, why? Because the one who has power abuses the one who doesn't have power in the situation. And when the example of the elder sits above us, he keeps balance and equity amongst all those of his children, all those of his family. But at the disappearance of that elder, what happens? The one in power abuses the one who's not in power. The description of, for example, that in many cases, what happens? The elder takes the right of the youngers and says, what do they need? I'm the one with responsibilities. Or the men take the share of the women and their sisters to say that we are the ones who have to provide. What do they have to do with anything? There's no concern to say what was the actual will of the individual who left. When a person dies, whatever they leave behind them, there are 4 things that have to be done before anybody has a share in the wealth that they possess. The first of those things is taking tajheez al-mayyit, paying attention to the process of burial. If there's cost associated with the transportation of the body, the preparing of the grave, the getting of the kafan, making the arrangements for the entirety of the burial, the first thing that you do is the one who dies, his wealth, however he's left it, the first element that comes out before anyone gets to see what's left is the cost of that burial. This is where many times things fall apart. People say that, oh, Fulan bin Fulan made a wasiyah, they want to be buried in such and such place, and we say, what? Who cares about what he said? A wasiyah, by the way, is both written and given verbally. And if it's sufficient that it was given verbally in Islam, it doesn't have to be written. Meaning that those responsibilities of the deceased have to be respected if it's physically possible to do it. And many times, unfortunately, even here we've seen, marhum wanted to be buried in such and such place, but it's too far and too expensive. So we're not even going to consider it. No, that's our money, how can we spend it on that? The second element that's a requirement that should be paid out is if they have any duyun and loans. One of the things that, by the way, people think about when they think about their will, and this is a joke that people make, is I have nothing to give, well, how can I write a will? I have no possessions yet. I'll wait until Allah gives me some money to write a will. A will is not just about wealth. A will is about responsibility and obligation. That if there's an obligation upon my head, let me make sure it's fulfilled and write it in the process of a will. Which is why one of the elements before anyone gets a share is if they have outstanding loans, those loans have to be paid first. Then comes the third element, that if they had a hajj wajib upon them and they were unable to perform it in their life and they've left wealth, that hajj has to be taken care of. And then finally, the fourth part is if they wrote a wasiyah of how they want to disperse 1/3 of the wealth that they leave behind, that has to be honored. One of the very interesting things about Islam is Islam says you are the owner of whatever you possess and you have a right of ownership until you die. You don't own anything when you die. You yourself become a piece of property that people have to take care of, which is why when you die, you have a wali, you have someone who has authority over you that now takes care of your responsibilities because you can't do anything yourself. You have no rights, you have nothing, you're not anything, you're a possession yourself. That your wali is the one who now has the responsibility to bury you. Your wali has the responsibility to make sure your affairs are taken care of. You yourself can't do anything for yourself. But the mercy of Islam is such that it affixes 1/3 of your property that you have and says that even after your death, you have the haqq at-tasarruf, you have the right to spend it and decide what you want to do with it. Once all 4 of these are completed, then the right of the inheritors comes in that they have a share in the property that a person leaves behind. But other than that, until all 4 of these are taken care of, nobody has a share. The mistake that Allah is warning about is that you forget that Allah is watching and paying attention to everything that you're doing and everything will have an account. And you imagine that now that this person is gone, you can do whatever you want with their wealth and their property and no one will ever know. And this used to happen then, and unfortunately till today, it's something that continues to happen now. And this is where Allah mentions and He says, فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَى وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ شَرًّا يَرَى. Don't imagine if you perform an atom's weight of good, Allah will make sure that you get held to account for it and rewarded for it. And if you do an atom's weight of evil, don't imagine if people can see you or they can't, or they know or they don't know what you're doing. Allah will give you account for each of these items. The fourth of these is, we end very quickly. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allah says, وَتُحِبُّونَ مَالَ حُبًّا جَمًّا. That, oh mankind, you bring trouble upon yourself. Oh society of people, you bring problems upon yourself. Why? When you love to amass wealth. You love the collection of wealth. The significance of Allah mentioning this is many times we don't look at, and we mentioned this yesterday and we've been mentioning it the past few days regarding Islamic concepts of finance, is paying attention to where your money is coming from. When I have an insurance payout, do I do it legally or do I do it the way I want to do it? Don't answer that, I don't want to know. But these are examples of people who have love for wealth, where they're cheating the system, they're cheating the laws of the society and saying, Hum al-kuffar, they are disbelievers, who cares, take their money any which way you can. This is not Islam. This is the love of wealth, not the love of Allah. Anytime I'm someone who mistreats another human being, it's not on the basis of Islam. Islam insists that even in the conditions of war, there has to be fair treatment for people who are fighters and who are not fighters, and the environment. To cut down a tree in an act of war is not permissible for you unless if it's absolutely necessary for the defense of Islam. A tree! Here we are, we live in a foreign land, and sometimes what do? We say take advantage of the system, abuse the system. It's a system of, for example, people who aren't Muslim. You live by the land, you live by the rules. In any country you live in, you have a sense and an obligation to fit and follow the rules and the laws of that society. This was the attribute of As-Sadiq Al-Amin Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Look and see in the life of the Prophet. He too was a minority amongst disbelievers. He gave us the example that if you should be a minority and your society does not follow your religion, how do you behave with them? You don't abuse them. You don't take advantage of the system. You don't become someone who abuses and lies to the process of law that exists. Rather, you become the most trustworthy, honest individual in the entirety of that society. When Rasulullah is referred to as As-Sadiq Al-Amin, the truthful, the trustworthy, the meaning of that was, in a society where banks didn't exist, if you came into a possession of wealth, what did you do with it? You either buried it, you hid it, or you put it with a trustworthy person who would keep your wealth safe. The attribute amongst the mushrikeen, Abu Sufyan Mal'un, would trust his wealth in the hands of Rasulullah, and Rasulullah never did khayana, never cheated Abu Sufyan. Those people who were the enemies of Islam, hiddenly and openly, that Rasulullah knew that if there is a man in the entirety of Makkah who is trustworthy, it is Rasulullah. Oh mu'mineen, you live in a land of people who aren't Muslimin. Why aren't we known as the most trustworthy of society? And the mistake is, al-malu hubban jamma. You love wealth. When we say, oh, it's people of disbelief and so on and so forth, we're not saying it because we're trying to promote Islam in the society. We're using it as an excuse to abuse the society. That's not our religion. That's the religion of wealth speaking. That's not the religion of Ahlul Bayt speaking. That's not our ideology that's speaking. That's this mistake that's coming out of people wanting the wealth of this world. The example of this, that this was a problem, comes even from the time and the door of Nabi Isa alayhi salam. Where one of the famous stories of Nabi Isa is that he's walking with Hawariyun and people who are his companions and looking to him for support. As he's walking through the desert, they come upon 3 piles of gold. Nabi Isa turns to him and he says, this is the reason for the killing of men. He points this and says, this is the reason for the killing. Notice I'm not pointing at anyone, I'm pointing over here. This is the reason for the killing of men. That this wealth, there's hadas, there's desire for it, there's greed for it. And Nabi Isa continues walking past it without looking at it, paying attention to it. And some of the companions listened to him and followed along, but one amongst them says, Nabi Isa, I gotta kind of go. Nabi Isa says, go. He leaves. Shortly thereafter, another one says, Nabi Isa, I can hear my baby crying. I gotta go. I'm making that up. He didn't say that. He says, I have to go. The second one leaves. And eventually a third one gets up and leaves. The 3 go and they come back and they see each other back at the piles of gold. They say, Isa alayhi salam left it, but we know better. So they stand at the piles of gold, and the first one says, how do we divide this? And he says, equally. You get 1 pile, I get 1 pile, he gets 1 pile. They say, okay, fine. Now they start thinking about how are they going to transport their gold. In the middle of it, they realize we're really hungry because Isa alayhi salam didn't eat a lot. We're really hungry. So one of them says, okay, you know what? You 2 stay here. I'll go get us food. And then after we eat, then we'll take our gold and go. So the one goes to get food. The other 2 stand by the piles of gold. The other 2 now seeing the 3rd pile of gold, they say, hey, you know what? What if when he comes back, we ambush him and kill him, and then we get 1.5 piles of gold each? They say, that's a really good idea. The one who goes to get bread, he says, why am I getting bread for the other 2 and feeding them so they can take gold? I'll poison the food, kill them, and I'll get 3 piles of gold. So he comes back with poisoned food. The other 2 ambush him and kill him before he can do anything. Then they say, now we have to transport this gold. They eat the food, and what happens? They all die. So now you have 3 piles of gold and 3 dead bodies. And sure enough, shortly thereafter, Nabi Isa walks back and he sees the scene. Hey, these are the 3 who had to go, and these are where they went. Nabi Isa has the ability to raise the dead. He prays to Allah, raises the dead. He says, didn't I tell you this is the purpose of the killing of people? Didn't I explain to you that this is the cause of death in society? Look and see how quickly they forgot the lesson that was taught to them because of the love and the desire of wealth. Be careful. Wealth is a tool. If you use it for khair, it will take you to Jannah. But if wealth is your end and your success and your completion, then you'll do anything to get it and you'll have nothing left with you. You can't take it with you. You can collect as much of it as you want and it won't ever assist you. Our sixth Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, two desires are never fulfilled. Two hungers can never be satisfied. One is the hunger for knowledge, and the other is the hunger for wealth. Be careful which you chase after. One is an act of ibadah, and the other is a burden on your neck. Tonight is the night where we mentioned that one who saw nothing greater in his life than the love of Ahlul Bayt. One of the greatest strategies of what happens in Karbala and why this narration stays with us of the event of Karbala is the efforts of Abul Fadl. One of the descriptions of how Imam Hussain establishes, remember something, Imam Hussain was not careless with his life. Imam Hussain always went to preserve his life and preserve the message of Islam. This is why the strategy that he takes on the day of Ashura is something we'll discuss tomorrow night, but it was something that was tactically done. And Imam Hussain took his strongest asset and put it in front of the tent for the protection of the women. Sometimes there's a discussion to say, what was the strength? How mighty was Abul Fadl? And there are comparisons given from the day of Ashura. When the initial armies clashed, 10 of the supporters and companions of Imam Hussain became surrounded by the army of Umar Sa'd because they were few and the enemy was many. The description writes and says that Abul Fadl alone was able to free 10 men, where 10 men could not get away from the army. One Abbas freed these 10 men and brought them back to the side of Imam Hussain. So the conclusion was, Abul Fadl is greater than 10 men. They describe and say when Abul Fadl launches his attack on the day of Ashura, there are 4,000 men stationed in front of the river to prevent Imam Hussain from drinking. When this one Abul Fadl launches his attack against the army, 4,000 men scatter in fear. So the conclusion came, Abul Fadl is greater than 4,000 men. Others still pay attention and say, how is it that 72 companions, or in total, if you look at some estimations, 124 men, stood against an army that is described of 30,000 or greater? And the explanation comes and says that that army of 30,000 should have just simply washed over the entirety of the encampment and wiped them out in one instance. And this is where you see the strategy of Imam Hussain, that he says, Abul Fadl, you stand in front of the tents. And as long as you stand here, the army will not dare to approach this encampment. Do you know the description of Abul Fadl? They describe and say when he would sit on a horse, his feet would touch the ground. Meaning he was of great size and stature, as well as the confidence of Iman, that you couldn't overcome him. Which is why some of the poetry that he recites, and part of the fact, don't imagine Abul Fadl was just a warrior. He was a scholar of Islam, he was a faqih, he was a literary man. Look at his poetry on the day of Ashura and you'll see that this is not a common man's words. The son of Ali is an anomaly like Ali ibn Abi Talib. Amir al-Mu'mineen, they would say, boggles the mind that he is a warrior on the battlefield, he is a statesman in the court, he is a humanitarian, and he is an abid all in one time. Whereas an abid and one who worships Allah, how could he be a warrior? How could someone who fears God then at the same time have the ability of a statesman and a speaker? The same way Abul Fadl, the army fears him, and his poetry is reflective of the intellect he possesses. That he would stand there waving his arm, he says, you attack our children, you attack our old men. Abul Fadl stands in front of you and none of you dare to approach him. He couldn't enter the battlefield because Imam Hussain had commanded him, stay in this location. When you see that Imam Hussain enters into the battlefield over 70 times to collect every one of his shuhada, how is it that when a soldier falls and Imam Hussain is standing in the middle of their army, the army doesn't just walk around him and take over his encampment? It's because this one Abbas is standing there, and in the fear of this Abbas, no one will approach the tents of Imam Hussain. Which is why, at one point in time, Abul Fadl says, Yabna Rasulullah, oh my master, I wish to take my vengeance against them. Imam Hussain replies and he says, oh Abbas, you are the flag bearer of my army. And how can there be an army if the flag bearer leaves? Abbas, I need you here. Abu al-Fadl would look to his right, he would look to his left and say, Master, now there is either you or there is me. There is no one left for me to be the flag bearer for. So Imam Hussain would say, then, oh Abbas, the cries of thirst are coming from the tents, go and quench their thirst. Why did Imam Hussain not send him to fight and to kill as many of the enemy as he could? Because the goal of Imam Hussain in Karbala was not the destruction of the enemy, but the hidayah of the enemy, bringing them to Islam and guidance. So he says, go to them in such a way that you are the one who is bringing water for the orphan children. When you see that Abu al-Fadl now mounts and approaches the river and 4,000 men look to suppress him and look to stop him, it's because of one of the things Umar Sa'd describes, and he says, when they came to Umar Sa'd after Karbala, they said, oh Umar Sa'd, you had unmeasurable force. Why did you kill them? Why did you not suppress them and take them as prisoners? Umar Sa'd replies, he says, may Allah silence you with stones in your mouth. Do you not know they were like lions fighting for shahada? They would not allow us to take them as prisoners. They would fight until they would die in the battlefield. We had no choice but to kill them. Now understand, when they see Abu al-Fadl reach the river, take the water and stand up, they said amongst themselves, we couldn't stop them when they were thirsty for 3 days. If this man and his brother attain water, they will wipe out the entirety of our army. So they fought Abu al-Fadl with treachery. If you look and you see that that soldier who was that one that the entire army feared, they did not kill him in honorable battle. Rather, they used tactics to come against him. One, they hid behind trees to attack him. Two, they cut his hands, that was forbidden in Islam. And three, they targeted his peaceful mission when he was one who was not looking to fight them. They describe and say, as Abu al-Fadl left the water with a water skin full to fulfill the command of Imam Hussain, they came with treachery, and one mal'oon cut off the right hand of Abu al-Fadl. Why? He could not stand to face the sword of Abbas, so he imagined, let me remove the hands of Abbas. They describe and say, shortly thereafter, another one came with treachery, cut the other hand of Abbas. That was haram in the religion of Islam, but they said, we have no reply to this man. If he should drink the water, he would destroy us. Abu al-Fadl, even in this condition, continues to move forward until eventually they say, in his fear, we could not face him, that even without hands, the man would not stop moving. We started to shoot arrows at him from every direction. They describe and say, the poets write and say, it was like locusts gathering around Abu al-Fadl. The arrows began to fall in his direction. Mukhtar would say, Harmala, what did you do in Karbala? He would say, I am that one, O Mukhtar, who shot the water skin of Abbas when he had no hands. The poet writes, it was as if as the water drained, we saw the life of Abbas drain from his eyes. There's a description that says, until that moment, you would see a hujum moving back and forth as Abu al-Fadl would move through the field of Karbala. They would chase after him to keep up with him. But all of a sudden, in a moment, the hujum stopped in one place, and then it did not move forward. Why? Abu al-Fadl, until that moment, had the command of the son of Rasulullah that bring water. So he said, whatever I have sacrificed, the message of Abu Abdullah fulfilled. But once the water drained, the soldier then, the son of al-Baneen says, what do I do now? Do I return to the water? Do I return empty-handed to Hussein? In this condition, they say, the arrows continued to fall on him until eventually one pierced his eye, one pierced his chest. In this condition, as now Abu al-Fadl is sitting on the horse, a mal'oon came with a heavy mace, struck the head of Hazrat Abbas from behind. The man fell from his horse. He fell upon his face. He fell upon those arrows that had covered his body. There's a very famous exchange that when Imam Hussain comes to his brother, he finds Abu al-Fadl laying upon his face in the field of Karbala. Imam Hussain stands next to the body. Abu al-Fadl calls out, O Jundi, O soldier, I know you have come to collect my head, but be patient with me a little while. Let me just bid farewell to my brother, then you can do with me what you like. Imam Hussain turned over the body. The arrows have pierced the chest and the eye of Abu al-Fadl. Imam Hussain listens to his brother's final words. Oh brother, do not take me from this place. Leave me here. Whether it is because it will create fear in the hearts of women, whether it is because Abu al-Fadl is the one who witnessed Hussain try to lift the body of Akbar and could not. Says, my life has been in your service. I cannot imagine you in my service, brother. Leave me here. They describe and say, as Imam Hussain would stand up from this body, he would proceed back to the tents. He calls out and he says, Al-an kasara dhahri. Now my back has been broken. My maneuvering has been reduced. My enemy has come and oppressed me in this condition. Mata bi Hussain.